The whole line of my research is directed to trying to understand how language originated. And I've long advocated the idea that if we want to understand that, the place to start is in human infancy. The human infant provides a sort of model for how language builds from very primitive beginnings. The primitive beginning is not a trivial one, but it's very primitive. And it is simply the ability to vocalize at will at any point in time. And not only the ability, the inclination to do it 3,500 times a day. We have reason to believe that if there is any advantage in language, any sex advantage in language, the girls have it. The girls are a little better than the boys with regard to language things. Males and females differ in a variety of ways, but with regard to language, it's generally believed that that females have a bit of an advantage. But we were surprised to find that the boys were vocalizing more in the first year, not in the second. By the second year, this difference has, if anything, reversed. It looks like that by the end of the second year, the girls have begun to vocalize more than the boys. But your question is, why would the boys produce more vocalizations? And in order to answer that question, we have to ask why babies are producing all these vocalizations in the first place. We have developed we and some others have developed a theory about that. We think that that human infants produce all these vocalizations as what we call fitness signals. They are indicating by producing these vocalizations that they are well and that they are worthy of the investment of their caregivers. Now, in the distant past, you have to imagine that the human infant was a very vulnerable creature. They're still very vulnerable. They're born completely helpless, but they were especially vulnerable in the past. So even a few hundred years ago, the vast majority of, well, not the vast majority, but at least the majority of babies were going to die before they got through the first year. They weren't going to make it, right? And parents, throughout the history of humankind, had to be paying attention to which babies that they had were likely to survive, because they were having to do anything they could to survive themselves. So they abandoned babies that didn't seem particularly well. This is well recognized that a very large proportion of human infants in the distant past were abandoned rather than being cared for into their early years. So if they looked like they weren't particularly viable, the parents would invest in the other infants rather than them. So the vocalizations that were being produced by the human infants were being naturally selected, we propose. They were being naturally selected as indicators to the parents of how well they were.